What if Leandros was right? What if Titus is secretly a worshipper of the primordial truth? To answer these questions, I first had to release him from his confinement so I could start this, to be honest, very easy build, which should raise some suspicion. I first removed his chestplate and brushed the remaining parts clean. And after successfully separating legs from torso, I debuted the parts and cut away the ultramarine symbols on his belt buckle and loincloth. Thankfully, James did a good job designing this one here, so one could cut these off very easy in a more or less 90-degree angle. I wanted to keep the very nice sculpted pelt, so I also had to separate pauldron from chest piece, which was in return switched with a Chaos Legionnaire's one. And once again I had to cut this thing apart, but as Titus' original chest piece has some different anchor points, I had to cut the little knob off that extends into the torso. And after that, his new chest piece was more or less fitting, but I discovered some more mold lines to debut. And when these little unappealing mobies were gone, I gave him his legs. And after outfitting him with these ceramide pants, I filled up his midsection with a little bit of green stuff and glued his chest piece in place. And when that was dry, I used the backside of my knife to sculpt something. I guess it would have been easier to have it being a smooth surface and just paint it as another fabric, but I didn't have the idea while building it. I waited a couple of minutes so that the green stuff hardens a little, gave him his gear and cape, where I forgot to remove the Ultramar symbol at this point, glued on his pelty shoulders while carefully watching that the green stuff didn't morph into an undefinable undefinition, and went on with his very defined head. And as we all know, if you fall to chaos, your hair will fall out as well. If you're not Fulgrim, that is. So I decided to get Titus a haircut, which was fiddly but not difficult to do. And it really is the key point of this build in my opinion. I wanted to stay as close as possible to the original miniature, but twist him into a Chaoslord. So I polished his head with the smooth side of the sanding sponge and redefined his scar because it's actually a nice addition to his face in my opinion. Because the torso parts didn't align 100%, I had to fill them up with the leftover green stuff I once again had. And when that was done, I placed his head between his pelty shoulders and went on with his bolter. I used this Black Marine's bolter because it just looks so distinctively chaos in my opinion, got rid of the additional hand and the maggots crawling on it, and after that I replaced his chainsword with a Chaos Chosen's mace, to resemble something like a Crucius. But that thing was way too long, so I cut it in half while also removing the handle from the sword and the sword itself. I only left the last part where he actually secures the sword in his hand intact, so I could glue these together. I only had to remove the hand from the mace and two of the blades, so it actually fits near his foot. Otherwise the tactical rock would be in the way. And by the way, if you like content like this, I would love to encourage you to leave a like, hype, subscription, or just leave a prayer to the primordial truth. And after that was done, I gave Titus his new power pack, which fits suspiciously well onto his backpack knob, and if that isn't evidence, I cannot tell you what is. As I waited for a good opportunity to use this Night Lord's banner top, I decided that now is the time. Cut it out of the sprue, sharpened the pole a little bit and drilled a tiny hole into the backpack itself to have it secured properly. And while that dries, I thought I could use the Sisters of Battle backpack thingy as an additional trim. And after cutting it off and removing the most outstanding features on it, I glued it behind his head. And if you haven't guessed it already, I am gonna build him as if he had joined the Word Bearers. My Discord server decided that this would be the proper ironic twist, and I was absolutely agreeing on that. So to word verify him even more, I had to give him some scriptures, and I would have loved to sculpt these as well after seeing what some people in my community can do. But due to a lack of time, I just used these green stuff chaos purity seals and candles. I placed them where I thought they fit, and while you see me doing this, I also wanted to thank my amazing patrons and channel members for their continued support. Because of you guys, this show keeps on running, and I am absolutely grateful for that. And after all these purity seals were in place, it was time for priming him purple. Why purple? Because I wanted to try how it reacts with Vallejo's Evil Red, which was the first coat. After covering the whole miniature, I went on with Gory Red, which I applied in a dry brushing motion over the still wet coat of Evil Red, so it red blends into each other right from the start. And after that, I picked out the areas I wanted to be highlighted, like the feet, chest and all the other areas that face upwards, as well as his belt buckle. And after that I painted his cape, where I cut away the ultramarine symbol by now with dark rust and a tiny amount of water because I wanted to build up the color here. The inside of his cape got a solid coat of Vallejo's black and a highlighting color of Corvus black. For his now unhaired head, I used dark purple, Buckman's Glow and Elfic Flash and wet blended these into each other. This creates a sick and pale skin color which I absolutely adore and like, even more on a word bearer. And while I had the Elfic Flash on hand, I used it in a 50-50 mix for the second layer of the cape, the loincloth and everything that represents something made of paper. Once that's done, I painted some golden details like the humongous Gale Star and the trim on his mace-like crucius with Pro Acryls bronze. And after that I used Vallejo's dark gunmetal and Pro Acryl silver in a 50-50 mix to paint the armor trim. Since he was way too clean and colorless for my taste, I used Pro Acryl's jade and a lot of water to verdigrisify the armor. I occasionally put a little bit of dark sea blue into the mix to have darker hues. And once that's done, I washed the metallics and fur with Vallejo's Game Wash Black and went on with adding a lot of highlighting. First I used a 50-50 mix of Elfic Flash and Dark Rust for the fur, and after that I used jade and white for his eyes. And when that was done, I painted the word bearer specific ley lines and scribble like parts all over him with white for the armor and magenta for his skin. To finish the miniature, I used an old brush and randomly brushed it over the golden parts and called him done. And here we have him, Titus in his prime. Titus as he should be. I honestly started this build for the memes, but I am very happy about the result. And I am especially happy about the head, because he really reminds me of Eliphas from Dawn of War 1, bringing back some good memories and tying the old and new Warhammer games together. But tell me what you think. Is a Wordbearer Titus the way to go, or should he be a Black Legionnaire? It's good to be back after some days of a forced break, but luckily I could record some videos in that time and now I only have to cut them. And even though they might look a little bit different with the lightning and background, I guess they will hold up as well as the usual stuff. But anyway, thank you for watching, thank you for your time, and we are going to see each other in the next one!